Good afternoon. I'm Desiree Dembski-Hamlin, Deputy Director of Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. On behalf of Freedom's Way, I'd like to welcome you to Successful Strategies for Outdoor Programming for Children and Families, the second session in our third webinar series, Using Environmental and Place-Based Education to Engage with Families. I'd like to thank Freedom's Way board member, Susie Fonda, for organizing this series, and our panelists, Lindsay Shackley with Beaver Brook Association, Sarah Kasevich with Farrington Nature Linc, and Lisa Carlin with Mass Audubon for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us today. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, Freedom's Way National Heritage Area works with partners across 45 communities in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. Our mission is to promote, protect, and interpret the natural, cultural, and historical resources of those communities. Since November, we have offered a number of webinar series to encourage the development of family programs for our annual Hidden Treasures program this May. This year, it has been reimagined as the Hidden Treasures Festival of Nature, Culture, and History. We hope you consider joining us and partnering with us during this program. So a few housekeeping items. Everyone will be on mute today, and we will take questions at the end. However, if you have questions that come to mind throughout the presentations, please feel free to enter them in the chat or use the question and answer function, and Susie will facilitate those at the end. Today's session is being recorded and will be sent out to registrants next week. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our facilitator for today's session, Susie Fonda. Susie is a Freedom's Way board member and an educator with 15 years of experience in museums, including the Concord Museum, the Museum of Fine Arts Boston, and the Plymouth Pawtuxet Museums, formerly known as Plymouth Plantation. Welcome, Susie.
Thanks, Desiree, and thank you so much for putting all of this together. I have to say we could not do any of this without Desiree's help. So thank you so much. So we are so thrilled today to have our panel of three practitioners in the field who will be talking about some of the specifics of their program. And I do hope some of you were able to join us last week for David Sobel's talk. And if you didn't, I do encourage you to go and find the video when Desiree sends it out and watch it. And during his talk, he made a fantastic case for why getting kids and families out in nature is so necessary, particularly in this day and age. And he outlined some of the best practices in the field. So I do encourage you to go and watch that if you haven't had a chance to already. But today we're going to build on that talk and talks about some of the more specifics with some case studies about running programs specifically for kids and families from some of our community partners from across our 45 towns in the Freedom's Way area. So we are going to start, and as Desiree mentioned, we will have time for questions at the end. So if things do come up, please pop them into the Q&A or into the chat, and we will get to them. So we're gonna take this. We'll start with Lindsay Shackley, who will talk to us about some of the work they've been doing at Beaver Brook Association.
So as Susie said, I am representing Beaver Brook today. You may have noticed Celeste's name was mentioned in the emails. She passed it over to me because she knows that family programming and getting families outdoors is a passion of mine. It's actually been the focus of my master's degree work. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk to you guys today. So who is Beaver Brook? We are located in Hollis, New Hampshire, which is really close to Nashua and right across the border from Massachusetts. It was founded in 1964 as a conservation area. I think at that time it had like 12 acres of land, and currently we have about a little over 2,000 acres. My slide here says that we have 35 miles worth of trails, but I think at this point it's closer to 40 miles worth of trails. Most years we see about 6,000 field trip students, and I don't have a number, but I think it's around 300 kids for our summer camps. So like I said, that's most years. Obviously that was not this past year. So this past year has been very different. But that's kind of cool because it's given us the opportunity to delve more into family programming, expand our homeschool programming, and our forest preschool as well. So a little bit about some of the outdoor programming, family programming that we have done this past year. So when we were able to start programming again in, I guess it was in June of last year, we decided to just do all family programming for kids because we felt like we weren't quite ready to try those COVID protocols without the assistance of families there. So everything we did during the summer involved parents. So here are a couple pictures from things that we did this past summer. So on the top there, the top left hand, you can see there's a picture of one of our instructors holding a frog. And then there's also a picture of a campfire and some campfire cooking. So those would have been things that fell under what we called guided hikes, which was kind of our first thing that we were able to try out and jump right into. So the guided hikes included a lot of different things like pond dipping, campfire cooking. We also did some fort building. So bringing families in and going for hikes and that kind of thing. So that was one of the things that we did. Another thing you can see there on the bottom left-hand corner, there's a picture of a fairy house. We had a really successful, we called it Enchanted Forest fairy house building program. It was, we actually started it. We didn't have any idea whether it would go or not. So we just started with one class and we had such a long wait list for that one that we ended up, we added another session of it and then another session and another session because it was just so popular. So that one was actually largely run by a college student who was home for the summer. She's a teaching degree student, and she wrote a story that went along with it. It was a conservation themed story that involved a story about fairies living at Beaver Brook. And then we took people for a hike and talked about some fairy lore and different legends of trees and things that were there on the property. And then came back and built fairy houses. I don't know, but I think one of the reasons that one was so successful is just because people were really looking for some way to kind of have some escapism, leave reality for at least a little bit. So anyway, that one was really popular. And then those other two pictures you can see are pictures from our story walk. So that would have been a self-guided program where we had a story that is divided up. So you take the pictures of the book apart and then laminate them to keep them safe and clean from the elements. And then it kind of is spread out across the trail so that the family kind of goes along. So you're doing both a hike and a story. So that when we started out, we had kind of a social media campaign to go with it. So for the first month, we would post and let people know when we had changed the story. We had 2 different locations for that. And we asked people to submit their photos. We got 24 different photos from families on the story walk. And according to Facebook, we had 1,752 engagements. So either people sharing it or commenting, that kind of thing. So that was some of what we did this summer involving families that was successful. And then we continued it into the fall and even into the winter. So you can see there, we actually hadn't planned to continue the story walks into the fall, but people kept on calling and emailing and being like, when are you going to change the story walk? We want more. So we went ahead and continued that into the fall and even the winter. So you can see there on the bottom left-hand side, those are two pictures from the story walk that people sent us. So even into the snow, and there's another picture on the upper right-hand corner of the story walk in the fall. We also had good luck with things like scavenger hunts, also letterboxing, which I think is something that David Sobel mentioned last week, was letterboxing, which is kind of a treasure hunt sort of thing where people go and have a stamp. So we do have some of those that were successful. And then building on our idea for the story walk, we did a solstice event in December. So I have a picture there on the top left hand section of the screen there, which is supposed to represent it. It's actually that picture isn't actually from it, because we were so busy during the event that I never managed to take any pictures. But we did it was a story walk. So you can see on the bottom right hand corner, there's two pictures there. Those were from the story walk. It was a story that my kids and I wrote and illustrated, and then we used the characters in the story. They were all native to New Hampshire, and we set up some stations so that people could learn about nature as well. And like I said, that one was really successful as well. I think we sectioned it out so that we had people had to sign up for a time slot when they would come and start the story walk, so that we were able to separate people out in that way. Oh, I did want to mention, we did, most of the pictures here, people don't have face masks on, because those were the pictures that people sent in where they were on their individual walks. But for anything that we did, like the group hikes, the guided hikes, we did have people wearing masks. So we made sure to follow protocol there. Here are some more pictures of the story walk. I wanted to show you guys a couple of more close-up pictures of that, so you could kind of get an idea of what the nuts and bolts of that looked like. So we actually just repurposed political signs, painted them, and then put Velcro dots on. I was just astounded that this lasted through the winter. It wasn't until about February that we started having problems with the construction of it. The Velcro would freeze. And so in February, we ended up having to take them down, and we're just now getting ready to put them back up. But it's, like I said, just painted, and then those are the kind where you can just step in on them and stick them into the ground. The pages of the books, so it takes two picture books to make one story walk, because normally the pictures, are front to back. So this way we could separate them out. And then they're spread out probably about, I don't know, I would say usually 50 yards between pages, so that you can see from one page of the storybook, you can look down and see the next one. So just to kind of summarize, here on the left-hand side, you can see those were kind of our most successful events that we had, both in the summer and in the fall. And then on the right-hand side is kind of what we have found, both from experience and from some of the trails research that I did. I talked to people on the trails in 2019 to kind of ask about why they were coming, how often did they come, what were some of the challenges. And so that's kind of what I have over there. So one of the things is that people really are looking for, especially families are looking for an opportunity to be social with one another. So that family bonding, especially something that could be seen as a special event in some way. And I think especially now and during this past year, having something that was a special event was an attraction to families. Keeping in mind scheduling is a key, I think. Families have different schedules than other people without little kids. So keeping that in mind. Parents are looking for something that doesn't involve a lot of preparation on their part. And parents also have a lot of fear. A lot of parents are not necessarily comfortable, and they maybe haven't had a lot of outdoor experience themselves. So keeping that in mind, one of the things that I found from my research that I've done is that there are a lot of parents who have concerns about getting lost on the trails. So I think especially something like the story walks helps with that, and it gives parents the opportunity to give their kids a little bit of freedom so that they can move out ahead, but know that, okay, there's a stopping point. So and it helps the parents to know that they're on the right track. Another thing is that parents can be concerned about hazards as well. Is this going to be a trail where, there's a sharp drop off or something like that? So knowing that that has been thought of can be helpful as well. Parents are concerned about ticks and injuries, so just allaying that fear and letting them know that, there are things that we can do to protect from that. And then keeping in mind the issues with COVID. Some of the reasons that some of these activities that we have over here for both the summer and fall, why they were so successful, is that they were a lot of social events. They were something that felt special and where parents and kids could bond. So I think especially things involving stories can really really provide that for families. So I think that's it. I'll turn it back over. All right, thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Lindsay. So great to hear about those programs. And I have to say, I never knew that Velcro could freeze. So talk about the things that you learned from doing programs. So great. So we'll now go over to Sarah Kasevich from Farrington Nature Linc, who will talk to you about some of the programs she's been working on.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay and Susie and Desiree and Lisa. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this. And Lindsay, I was definitely like taking mental notes. I was like, Velcro, okay, it freezes. So yeah, I work at Farrington Nature Linc in Lincoln, Massachusetts. I'm the program director over there. Our mission is to enhance the well-being of children from low-income communities through a connection with the natural world. We are right on Route 2, and you'll hear a little bit more about our partnerships plural with a lot of urban communities. So we're only about as little as 15 minutes west of Somerville and Cambridge, a little bit further from Boston. And we have 75 acres out there, woods, trails, fields, wetlands, a barn. I think something that really defines us is our emphasis on health equity and social and racial justice. So kind of across all programs, among staff, among the board, and our organization overall, really, historically and increasingly more than ever, bringing this lens of equity and anti-racism. We definitely still have a lot more work to do. This is a lifelong journey, but that's something that we, are really committed to. So I know that some of you might have attended another talk last week about the benefits of time in nature for kids and adults and its positive impacts on health and mental health. And so, we really are founded around the recognition of this disparity between economically and racially marginalized communities versus more privileged communities when it comes to access to nature. So we sort of exist to bridge that gap. And just a couple examples of the ways that we do that in terms of programming. So we think of our approach as nature introduction. So although we do work with families and children who, might be spending a lot of time in nature, with their families or even through their school, the majority of kids that we work with have pretty limited opportunities to be part of nature, or certainly part of bigger nature, like what we have out in Lincoln. Maybe, they have more access to like a city park or something, which is also valuable. So, really recognizing that kids will come to our site or go to a city park even with a whole range of emotions, anywhere from excitement to fear. They're not necessarily used to being around bugs, or don't necessarily have the warm winter clothing and gear to be outside for more than the time it takes to wait for the bus or something. And so how do we sort of provide supports there? We use sliding scale pricing. So we make sure that the pricing is accessible as possible to our partner groups, which we'll talk more about. And like I mentioned, we run programs at our site in Lincoln, as well as going into urban areas. And the ideal is always to have kids we're working with kind of having both experiences. So it's a little bit more, we divide our programs into 3 main pathways. So experience programs are the sort of one-off things that we do, which primarily tends to be field trips at our site in Lincoln, where we're hosting a school or a camp. They might come multiple times throughout the year, but the activities are not necessarily connected. It might be like they come once during the summer and then they come during February vacation week, and totally different seasons. Our explore programs, we often call those nature clubs. So a lot of times that's us going to an after school program or a camp somewhere in urban Greater Boston and working with whatever park, green space, community garden, strip of grass next to the school that they have access to. And that can also mean a multi-visit series to our site in Lincoln, or kind of a hybrid of both. Our extend program is our teen leadership program. So it's a summer job primarily, with some part-time hours during the school year as well. And then our sort of community outreach programming. So these are usually events or workshops that are open pretty much to anybody, to the general public. And some of them are geared towards families with children, and some of them are geared towards adults. And yeah, we can talk more about that. So just to give you all a sense of like the types of things, like what are some activities that we actually do. The sort of top half of this list is more of our like core go-to activities. Some, but not all of these, you can basically do year round. And then there's some more sort of like seasonal specific or sort of specialty activities. So we definitely do a lot of hiking. In the summer, we borrow farm animals from other farms or schools, because that's when we have the most kids coming. So we have the capacity to take care of them. We do a lot of nature art, gardening for both. So we have a veggie and herb garden for both educational purposes. And we also, last year with COVID, decided to expand what we were producing and donate that produce to a food pantry in Somerville. Active games, get kids moving, pond exploration, which you can see here in the photo. We have a couple ponds, but the biggest one has tons of frogs. It is an awesome place to go and look for frogs with kids, and they love it. All kinds of varying levels of comfort with wading into the pond. And so we try to provide different sort of opportunities to scale up or down depending on kids' comfort levels. And they might, start off with a sort of more hesitant approach, and then by the end, they're going right in there. So kids can participate simply by, standing on the edge or sitting on the benches and helping to identify or looking at the creatures, the frogs or the insects that other kids are finding. They can put their feet in the water, go no further. They can stand on our dock and engage from there. Or they can wade in all the way up to their knees and no further than that. Sort of similar things. I see some things that we have in common with Beaver Brook, fort building in the woods. We do offer overnight campout experiences in tents. We probably only do that like 5 or 6 times per summer. Not like a ton, but a lot of the camps that come to us will use that as an opportunity to sort of test out a closer to home, like more supported camping experience before doing a sort of further away, more like wilderness feeling camping experience later in the summer. We do campfires, vernal pool exploration. We're sort of getting into that right now. We have an apple cider press and apple trees. We are starting a mushroom growing endeavor this year. We also did maple tapping and a small maple boil for the first time this year. A little bit of beekeeping, sort of for becoming jack of all trades. Some wild edibles, foraging type stuff. Animal tracking is great, especially in the winter, snowshoeing, sledding, and scavenger hunts. And so most of this is stuff that we do on our site in Lincoln, and a good amount of this stuff can sort of translate to things that we're doing in urban parks. Not all of it, of course, but like scavenger hunts, for example, you can do that pretty much anywhere. Active games, you can do that anywhere. Garden stuff you can do in a lot of places. So yeah, really wanting to highlight like a lot of this, especially the engaging with urban and low-income communities, is possible through partnerships. So working with after-school programs that might be run, either it's a private nonprofit or it's run by, the city under, Health and Human Services or the school department. Same thing with camps, school day groups. So working with teachers, administrators, a little bit with rec departments. I spoke a little bit in regards to our target demographic. So it's primarily students of color, families with low income, and the figure that we use to understand and assess low income status is free or reduced lunch. So, and this is pretty common. It's a way that individual families and schools or groups will sort of qualify for different resources. So how many of their students, based on household income and household size, qualify for free or reduced lunch through their school. So some of the communities that we're primarily serving are Cambridge, Somerville, Boston, Framingham, and then definitely a smattering of other communities. Waltham is right next to us, Arlington, Malden, Revere. And we're not limited to these communities. There's sort of, as long as they're serving our mission demographic, we are happy to work with you. And if a group is not serving our mission demographic, we will also create partnerships with different types of goals, usually a little bit more tied towards revenue or exposure. So some of the times when we're serving youth through partnerships, so it's like after school time, school vacation week. So we're always super busy during February and April vacation. Especially this year, we've done a lot of weekend programming, especially Saturdays, like virtual stuff. Summer is by far our busiest time of year. And then a little bit as well during the school day. That's an area where we're looking to expand. Some barriers that are probably pretty easy to imagine are transportation, right? So we're about 10 to 15 minutes from the end of the MBTA red line, the Alewife T stop. So we're close, but not close enough. So it is really expensive for groups to get a bus to transport kids out to our location. And individual families from our mission community don't always have the transportation or the time, or the familiarity or the comfort, and then funding. So we try to lower that barrier by offering programming on a sliding scale. So just some exciting photos. We've got a group here for a camp out with a campfire. We've got some girls excited about a frog. For the sake of time, I won't get into this quite as much. I did just want to share this awesome photo of one of our teen staff on the right, with a rock climbing guide that we hired for one of our outdoor teen leadership trips this past fall. So he should have his mask on, but maybe he was getting ready to, climb up on the wall and wanted to breathe a little bit. So I definitely wanted to hone in on this piece of direct enrollment programs. This is something that we've really expanded this year during COVID. So this generally looks like right now, if we have 3 different weekly groups for homeschooled children that are happening, and those are, publicly promoted. And then we also have a couple private groups of sort of families that have formed some sort of pod, and it's basically the same thing, same activities as our homeschooled group, but maybe slightly different hours. Like if their kids are going to school or are doing remote learning, maybe it's happening more during the after school hours. So this has been a great opportunity for us for a few reasons. So generating revenue, like with our mission-based programs that are serving kids from low-income communities, we do not make money off of those programs, maybe a little bit, but I wouldn't call it revenue. But with this, we do have an opportunity to earn a little bit of funding that we can put into our mission programs, and just getting our name out there, because we primarily serve urban communities. A lot of people in the town of Lincoln or in surrounding towns, don't know we exist, or, maybe driven by our sign on Route 2, but, don't really know what we are. And so just giving people to have an opportunity to have some exposure to us. It's also been a great way to give staff some hours and some experience, and time to, develop new curriculum and access equipment and materials that we wouldn't necessarily be purchasing unless we had funding from these programs where, we are charging money. So particularly with COVID, we have been pretty busy partnering with our mission communities, but not necessarily as busy as we normally would be. So it's been a great opportunity to sort of keep staff employed and even hire new people. We are actually finding that increasingly we're hearing from and serving families in these direct enrollment programs who do qualify for reduced fees. So we do have like a sliding scale income qualified opportunity, and that's sort of increasing through word of mouth. So I'm not even sure if we should be calling it revenue generation anymore, but something like that. And these don't, it's probably obvious, but this does not take place through partnerships with after school programs or schools. I think a great resource that we've had, and maybe a piece of advice, would be working really closely with a couple parents who are very tightly clued into the homeschoolers network, and are really enthusiastic about spreading the word. And, they're really dedicated to our mission and wanted to help us build this. So this programming actually started in response to a parent who lived locally, heard about us, wanted to support our mission, homeschools her daughter, is really is sort of, I think a leader among other families that homeschool. And she asked us if we could, if we offered anything. I was like, no, but we could if you want to help us start it. So I don't think we would have had nearly as much success figuring out how to run, like what the format should be, never mind promoting it and getting people to sign up, if we didn't have parents that were really supporting us in that way. Just the last piece is these are some of our sort of one-off or shorter series public events that are open to anybody, and sometimes they're free, sometimes they're ticketed. So a couple of these things we have coming up pretty soon, actually. So an Eyes on Owls presentation, Go Yoga, we're doing that again in June. We actually do a fairy festival, or we used to, we haven't done it recently. On the right, I don't know if anybody on here might be interested. We are in the middle of an awesome speaker series called On Belonging in Outdoor Spaces, which is all about access and inclusion in the outdoors. And it's in collaboration with several other Lincoln and Concord area organizations. We have an end of year fundraiser celebration, June bug, or end of summer event, birthday parties that we host, which are sort of similar goals to our homeschoolers groups, like similar type of format. We haven't done birthday parties since COVID hit, but I think that time is hopefully coming back around. And I just wanted to include a couple fun photos. One of our team staff holding a garter snake. She was very brave. Some kids on a field trip. I think this was like a couple Novembers ago. And then just finally to highlight, these are photos from our summer program last year, which was very, very small. Usually we spend our summer hiring teen staff to run nature-based activities for kids that are coming with their camp on field trips. But camps weren't taking field trips most of last summer because of COVID. So we hosted a tiny little program for our teen staff and some of their younger siblings, which is awesome because some of the programs that they normally would go to weren't running. They hadn't really had the opportunity to see and experience this awesome place where their siblings work and always talk about. So that was really, really fun. And that is it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. It's so great to hear all the things that you've been doing. I drive past your entrance on Route 2 all the time, as I'm sure many people do. So it's so good to know what's going on up at your place. So great. So we're now going to turn it over to our third speaker, who is Lisa Carlin from Mass Audubon.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Desiree. I'm excited to be here. All right, so I'm from Mass Audubon. Mass Audubon is a statewide organization, and we have about 20 staff sanctuaries across the state with many, many more unstaffed sanctuaries. I work specifically at Broad, which is in Worcester, but I'm here representing all the central sanctuaries here in central Massachusetts. So that's Broadmeadow Brook in Worcester and Wachusett Meadow in Princeton. This is from our webpage, so you can find us at massaudubon.org. And we are celebrating our 125 years this year. We got started in 1896, and I think our history is pretty cool. So I just wanted to share it briefly. We got started because there were two women, Harriet and Minna, and they lived in Boston, and they were really upset with the fashion of the time back in 1896. And that was for women to wear large hats with dead birds on their head. And these two ladies took it upon themselves to say that this fashion was ridiculous. And if people kept killing all of these birds, we wouldn't have any pretty birds left. This is kind of the equivalent of taking on the automobile industry and saying, we all need to drive electric cars. And the automobile industry is like, not happening. We're still going to make, gasoline powered cars. Well, Harriet and Minna took on this entity, this worldwide fashion, and took on the hat makers. And they eventually won. Two women in 1896 who can't vote and have very little power. And I think it's a really inspiring story to share with our youth and our kids, to be like, yeah, you might not be able to vote, and maybe you don't feel like you have a lot of power. But if we put our minds to it, there's a lot that can get done. So I'm really proud to work for an organization with two very strong women who got us started. I certainly encourage you to take a look at our website. There is a plethora of information in there, and lots of free and activities. Some are free and some are paid opportunities where you can come to different programs, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But if you get into this families with children section, and it talks about all of our different nature preschools and our camps, and then there's nature play days, which are these fun videos and activities that go along with them that families can do on their own, either in their backyard or in one of our sanctuaries, or even at one of these other places that have been featured today, that they could take these experiences and do that. And they include some scavenger hunts and just some general information. So if people are curious about things that they're seeing out there, they can get more information. So some of the ways that we engage children and families at Broadmeadow Brook and Wachusett Meadow include our preschool story hour, which is a child and caregiver type program. We have some drop-off preschool programming, At Broadmeadow Brook, we call it Discovering Nature. And at Wachusett Meadow, it's called Nature Adventures. We both offer summer camp and vacation week programming. Throughout the year, we'll do different family programs. So we'll have a family owl prowl or a family beaver walk. Wachusett Meadow is having a super successful endeavor this year in response to COVID called Outside In. And this really stemmed from our summer camp program with families saying, we don't want this to end. We're gonna go back to school somehow, some way, right? Nobody really knew what we were getting into in late August, early September, as we were entering most families hybrid mode. And so with schools having an asynchronous day, many of them on Wednesday, Wachusett Meadow was able to capitalize that and offer an afternoon program where kids, primarily school-age kids, would have an opportunity to be off screen to continue their summer camp style programming. And they get 30 kids at a time signing up, which is about the maximum that we can handle. And then we also offer homeschool programming as well at both sites. So we are keeping busy with our kids and families for sure. These are some pictures from our mostly Discovering Nature at Broadmeadow Brook, but there would be similar activities happening at Wachusett Meadow. So these are some of our kids on the left learning how to use snowshoes. We had amazing snow for snowshoes this year. That doesn't always happen. And so the kids were super excited to get out and use those snowshoes and figure out how they work. The middle picture is a Worcester State student who we had with us in the fall, and she was giving a little lesson about beaver dams. And so our kids were quite intent to hear what she had to say. And the picture on the far right is just one of the crafts that the kids did. This was a Thanksgiving turkey that they were thankful for different things. This is a little clip, hopefully, there we go, of my colleague Kristen. I'm just going to play you just a short snippet of our Nature Play video. So this is a video that we did that's on the website, and it helps families know what to do out there. So this is really geared towards families who aren't sure of how to interact in nature. Maybe they don't have a lot of experience. So this is all about playing in leaf piles, and it features the Nature Adventure kids at Wachusett Meadow.
Hi, I'm Kristen from Mass Audubon's Wachusett Meadow Wildlife Sanctuary, and I love to play in nature. Today, I'm going to show you how to have fun in leaf piles. Everybody ready? Yeah. Let's go!
On the sanctuary, our favorite way to play in leaf piles is to ask, what lives in a leaf pile? We look through the leaves to discover what critters might live there. What did you find in the leaf pile?
I found a spider.
What did you find?
A mushroom. I have a caterpillar. Ladybugs.
What did you find?
A leaf beetle. See that leaf beetle?
We are always careful to return the critters where we found them.
All right, so yeah, so that just continues on and talks about all the different things that you can do in leaf piles. And so it's super fun, but it's about 4 minutes. So you can go ahead and watch that on your own. This is a picture that was taken pre-COVID, but is super fun. These were some of our Discovering Nature kids at Broadmeadow Brook with our colleague, Miss Elizabeth. And we found a whole bunch of praying mantises in our bushes. And so you can see on Miss Elizabeth's hand, she has a praying mantis, and the kids are looking at it. And this comes from our summer camp program, and is a clip on our webpage that gives you a snippet of what it's like to come to summer camp at Broadmeadow Brook. So just a little snippet of what camp is like. Both Broadmeadow Brook and Wachusett Meadow have summer camps, and similar to Beaver Brook and Farrington Linc, you know, we do a lot of activities that are similar. We do the ponding, we are out looking for crayfish, we're learning about frogs and holding snakes, and really helping people interact with nature in a very positive and respectful way, because it's really important to teach those things. These are from our vacation week program. These were pre-COVID, and they were learning about rockets. And while we don't do rocketry at Broadmeadow Brook, we can do stomp rockets, which if you've never played with stomp rockets, they're super fun. And basically it's just air. So the boy on the right, who happens to be my son, has the paper rocket on there. And then this young lady was in the middle of her jump, and those paper rockets that they made were flying high. So it was a super fun activity for those guys. This is a picture of some of a homeschool program that we did a few years back. It was a land science program that we do in cooperation with our Drumlin Farm Wildlife Sanctuary in Lincoln. And it was a program that was based through the University of Wisconsin. It was kind of a land simulation model. And so the kids got to be different partners with this city. It was an imaginary city, but it was really based on the city of Lowell. And they got to be different stakeholders and think about protecting land and all of the different entities that want input on that. And so they had to take different roles and talk about why it would be good to do this or not to do this, and why conserve or why build. And then they had an opportunity to come out to our wildlife sanctuaries with one of the guy in the orange hat is our regional scientist. And so he was able to meet with them and talk with them and give them that real life experience. So that was a very fun homeschool program. But we do homeschool programs every other week at Broadmeadow Brook, and I believe similarly at Wachusett Meadow. And we often have families going to both places because we offer slightly different topics. And families can come to our sites and use our trails. Broadmeadow Brook has 430 acres right in the city of Worcester. And Wachusett Meadow has, I think, 800 some odd acres up in Princeton. Both sanctuaries have lots of signage because we know that that's really important to make people feel comfortable when you're outside. And we have nature play areas, and these are full of loose parts and places for kids and people of all ages to play. All right, so I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to Susie.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So thank you all. So we do have a few minutes for questions. And one question that came up in the chat is about fees. And I know, Sarah, you mentioned having sliding scale, and I'm curious what kinds of fees you all are charging for your various programs.
Depending on the program, we have different fees. So obviously, like the story walk, those things that are more self-guided are There's no charge for those. Beaver Brook itself is open, well, usually 365 days a year, and people can come and visit our trails for free. We do also have a nature play area as well. The other programs like the guided hikes, those kind of things that have to be staffed, the fees range from $10 a person to like some of our special events. We also had a Halloween event that was similar to the other one, and those are $15 to $20 per person.
Broadmeadow Brook, our fees are range right around $10 to $12 an hour for most programs. Our camp program this year for both Broadmeadow Brook and Wachusett Meadow has moved to a sliding scale. So we are piloting that for all of Mass Audubon. And so far it's been very positive experience, and we're really pleased with how it's working out.
For our programs that serve our mission community, for groups that come to our site in Lincoln for field trips, the sliding scale ranges from $1 per child to $15 per child. If it's a group that has fewer children qualifying for free and reduced lunch, we might charge some kind of minimum, especially if it's a smaller group. And to qualify for the sliding scale, it's based on the percentage of children in your group who qualify for free or reduced lunch. For the stuff we do, like the homeschoolers groups, that's intended to be revenue generating. We do have a sliding scale for that, but the full fee is usually about $30 per class, and most of those classes have been 3 hours. We're going to be doing one soon that's a little bit less because it's 2 hours, but people have to commit to the whole session, like all of the dates. It can't be sort of just like a one-off class. So usually they're sort of paying a lump sum for a session that could range anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks. And for our public events, it's sort of similar to what I think you all have been saying. Sometimes they're free, sometimes it might be up to like $20 per person, somewhere in there. We do also have hourly rates as well, especially for the after school programming that we do. That is harder. It tends to be determined by what the city or the school district sort of has as their cap for contracted program providers. So sometimes we get paid a lot, sometimes not so much.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful. One question, I want to get back to something that Lindsay alluded to in her presentation about attendance kind of in this time of COVID. And one thing, I come from the museum world where, you know, programs are down to almost nothing. And I'm really impressed that it seems like you're seeing more attendance, expanding programs, doing different audiences. Is that fair to say that you've been seeing more people wanting to participate in your programs?
We've had really good attendance and really good interest for our programs. I think we committed to doing everything 100% outdoors. And I think that was something that really drew people in. People really wanted something that was going to be 100% outdoors. So we also have a forest preschool, which is outdoors 100% of the time. We did a marshmallow roast this morning with preschoolers and their parents. So yeah, I think that definitely the 100% outdoors was one of the biggest things that was a draw to them. We doubled our homeschool program. So we had to expand that to 2 days a week. We doubled our parent and taught offering. So that is also 2 days a week. We could easily double our preschool offering, but we don't have the staff for it. So we have more interest than we have staff for at this point. So staff has been our limiting factor.
Yeah, I would echo what Lindsay says. I think that folks are really looking for those safe options, and being 100% outside, and Mass Audubon has committed to that as well. And yeah, and staff is hard because there are a lot of folks who are not comfortable teaching in person right now. And so that does limit what we can do.
Our summer camp programs will also be 100% outdoors this coming summer. So we're planning that as well.
No, I was Sarah, go ahead.
I was just going to echo the same thing. Yeah, exact same thing. Staffing can be complex, 100% outdoors. I think for this summer, we will be moving toward increased like emergency access to our outdoor spaces, like in case of thunder and lightning, because we know it would be prohibitive for some groups. If they didn't have that access, they might be hesitant to book a field trip at all. As long as that feels safe, I think we'll probably move in that direction.
Right, great. So I know we're just about at 3, but I'm just going to ask sort of one sort of quick question round robin to all of you, which is, if for anybody out there who's thinking about starting site, programs on site, outdoor programs, what's one piece of advice you might give to somebody who's thinking about that?
I'd say do it.
That's concise, Lisa.
Yeah, there are lots of families who are looking for this opportunity to interact with nature, to do something safe, to be able to get out. So provide that opportunity. You're going to just follow some basic precautions. You're going to use hand sanitizer, or you're going to have them wash their hands, but otherwise you stay outside, and it can totally be done. Hand warmers in the winter were our best friends. We made it through.
Okay, so just do it. Make sure you have your hand warmers.
That's right.
Anything else you'd add, Lindsay or Sarah?
I would say, think about it from the parents' perspective, and recognizing that not everybody has had a lot of experience being outdoors. So think about what can you do to guide and support families who don't have that outdoor experience. So things like how can we make sure that they feel comfortable, know that they're on the right path, that kind of thing. How can we help them to feel that they've taken care of tick problems, informing people about that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I would probably say to expect a lot of time and energy to sort of work towards scaling up programs. I think, this year starting homeschoolers programs that, we hadn't done before, it definitely still takes a lot of time and energy to figure out, like, okay, how are we going to staff this? Training, we had to hire a new person, training them, especially on a 75-acre site, even just the physical orientation, figuring out new systems. And, for us, we've sort of had the understanding that if we counted every hour that we put in, we would probably not be making money. But just knowing that, in the long term, things will sort of get to a place where it's a little bit more like plug and play. So just sort of being like mentally prepared and like not scared off by that, because we've learned a lot, and we've had a lot of great support, and I think we're moving in that plug and play direction.
Great, thank you. So we are just at a little after 3. So I do want to thank all of our panelists, to thank Lisa and Lindsay and Sarah for sharing their programs, and I want to congratulate all of you on having such success with your programs outdoors, and I hope it continues as we move into the next phases of post-pandemic life. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'll echo Susie's thanks and extend our thanks to all of you who are still with us and who joined us today. And I will just let you know that Hidden Treasures, the Festival of Nature, Culture, and History, will be taking place this May with an emphasis on virtual, self-guided, online, small group, different types of activities. And so keep an eye out for what's being offered this year. And if any of you are interested in designing an activity or an event to be included in Hidden Treasures, please visit discoverhiddentreasures.org to learn more. And if you can sign up, there are stipends that are available to help reimburse program costs in designing something. So we're happy to support you all in this effort. So have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.